Welcome to The Fight on Matrix Midwest with Randy Carricker.
Hi, kids, and welcome to the program. It is great to have you with us in The Fight. Coming up, a great story from the Open. Actually happened after the Open. Hey, what would Eli Drinkwitz do if he was in charge of college football for a day? And Cardinal heroes that played for the Angels, too, as the Cards take on the Angels in Anaheim this week. But first, it's time for your quick hits, and they are sponsored by our friends at St. Luke's. And let's start with the Cardinals. Their brain trust wanted to learn about their young team this season. Well, now they're learning how the youngest team in baseball will deal with adversity. After blowing a 7-0 lead and losing Sunday in Arizona, on Monday night in Anaheim, the Angels scored 2 in the 9th off of struggling closer Riley O'Brien, and the Cardinals lost 3-2 after leading 2-1 heading into the bottom of the 9th. Tony La Russa always said the toughest games to rebound from were the ones where your bullpen lost it in the 9th inning when you had a lead. So let's see how the Cardinals react here. And we should note that O'Brien didn't allow a run in his first 13 outings this season. He was spectacular. But since then, 28 games, 27 1/3 innings, 28 hits, 15 walks, 17 earned runs for a 5.62 earned run average in, again, 27 1/3 innings. A 5.62 ERA and 43 runners in 27 1/3 might be too many for a closer. He saved 18 and blown 4 saves since he got off to that terrific start. Oli Marmol has talked about how impressed he's been with the resilience of his team. Well, how do they react to losing back-to-back heartbreakers? And how do they react to being one of the 5 teams within a game of the National League's final wildcard spot and trying to throw it away? These might be bothersome losses, but they're also losses that let us know what the team is made of. And that's the big key here. What is this team made of, and who can you count on to be tough and to have the stomach to win big games when you need to in a couple of years? All right, let's move on to the SEC. They're holding their football media days down in Tampa, and Mizzou coach Eli Drinkwitz made the rounds with a couple of press conferences and stops at multiple radio and TV shows and podcasts. Well, at the SiriusXM College show, Eli was asked about the value of the rivalry with Kansas.
It's very important. It's very important for the region. It's very important for us to continue to make investments in the sport. I think anytime you're continually asking fans to donate, you better have something that causes them to invoke that emotion. And when you talk about the University of Kansas, you know, what's the best thing that comes out of the state of Kansas? I-70, okay? All right? And what do you call a good-looking girl in Kansas? A tourist, okay? So just so we're on the same page, you know, it's important that you have rivalries, and it's important that you play those. And our guys understand that's a big-time game for us, yep. And it's a big-time game. I mean, this thing goes all the way back to the 1800s, and people lost their lives in the burning of Kansas. They lost their lives in some of these things. So it's important how this thing turns out.
I love that guy. He's pretty funny. Drink also revealed, by the way, that running back Ahmad Hardy is on track to return to football in 5 to 8 weeks, which could allow him to play in the Tigers opener. More from Eli coming up later in the show, but unfortunately no more trolling of Kansas University. All right, next up, back in the spring at the conference meetings, the SEC conference meetings, Georgia coach Kirby Smart mentioned that he told the school president that if the SEC couldn't get the NCAA to adjust their rules to make sense to the SEC's liking, the conference should just leave and work on their own. At the SEC football media day, Commissioner Greg Sankey was asked if the talk about breaking away is real.
Real people have talked about that. They've opined about the frustrations that bring them to the point of saying we should look at something significantly different. I do not believe that is a leverage point. I think that's just honest communication. And so understand that beneath the observation is frustration. But I also know the pride with which I spoke of 13 national championships, and there is meaning and value. And I do think a national expectation that we participate in a national organization. But that national organization must function in a healthy manner.
All right, we know that the ego of the SEC leads it to believe that if it has its own championship game, it will be the national championship game, despite the fact that the Big Ten has won the last 3. I get the frustration that the SEC has with the NCAA. Everybody has that frustration, but they need to exhaust every avenue to get the NCAA to work with them before they go off on their own. That being said, going off on their own could be done, and we'll hear more from Sankey, and I'll tell you how it could be great coming up later in the program. How about this story from the Open? Of course, Cameron Young had a career day on Sunday. He took the clubhouse lead for more than 2 hours, had to sit in the clubhouse and watch as Ryan Fox birdied 4 of his last 6 holes and then hit a birdie putt on 18 to win the tournament and snatch it away from Young. Well, on Monday, Fox was headed back to New Zealand with his imitation claret jug and the real claret jug, both in their cases. And he's carrying them. You can see there's the picture. He's carrying them onto the plane. Freelance photographer Matt Hahn was on the same flight and got this shot of Fox with the cases, holding the trophies, just getting ready to get on the plane. But then, when he got on the plane, realized that, of all people, Cameron Young had the seat in front of Fox. There he is with the cap in front of Ryan Fox. So here is poor Cameron Young, who thought he had the claret jug, had it snatched away from him, and then all of a sudden, they're being put up in a carry-on on the flight that he's on, and the guy that is sitting right behind him is the guy that took the claret jug from him. Amazing that it could be on the same flight, and it's amazing that both Ryan Fox and Cameron Young were there together. What a shame, though, for Cameron Young to lose it that way and then actually have to fly home knowing that the claret jugs are right above his head. And isn't it amazing, by the way, that these pro golfers, they're making a lot of money. They're making at least $1 million a year. Isn't it amazing that they're flying commercial and that they're putting the claret jug up in a stowaway bin in coach? It really is remarkable that they're sitting there. But there they are. There's the winner of the Open, riding coach on his way back home. With the MLB trade deadline less than 2 weeks away, Thursday's start for Dustin May against the Diamondbacks is huge for him and for his market value. Since May pitched that one-hit gem against San Diego on June 15th, he's made 5 starts and has only 16 1/3 innings in those 5 starts. That's like 3+ per outing. He's allowed 25 hits in those 16 1/3 innings and 11 walks and 18 earned runs for a 9.92 ERA in the last month plus. There's a chance that May could enhance his value with a couple of good starts before the deadline, which is less than 2 weeks away, 13 days. But if May is bad again on Thursday here at home against Arizona, there probably won't be enough time for him to regain his market value, and he'll either get traded by the Cardinals for a song or stay here and become a free agent after the season and try to help the Cardinals win down the stretch. There couldn't be a worse time for the Cardinals and for May to have this stretch, because he was planning on cashing in big time with his talent after this season was concluded, whether it was leaving the Cardinals as a free agent or leaving another team as a free agent. But now he's had 5 bad starts in a row. He knows it, the Cardinals know it, and every team in baseball knows it. And it looks to me like Dustin May probably has decreased his market value to the point where a contender is going to say, I don't need that pitcher that's pitched bad for a month. I want to go get a better guy. There's going to be plenty of pitchers on the market, and I'm guessing that Dustin May winds up in August and September as a member of the St. Louis Cardinals. Those are your quick hits, and they are sponsored by St. Luke's, top-notch doctors in everything from heart health to orthopedics and more. Visit stlukes-stl.com today. Later in the show, we're going to make our daily wager. Last show, we bet on the Cardinals to win their series against the Angels, so we'll need some help there from the Redbirds. We'll have a new one today. Stick around for that. But coming up, more from Eli Drinkwitz from SEC Media Days. He has a lot of thoughts, and I'll give you the best thing Greg Sankey can do for his conference. That's coming your way here in The Fight. Down in Tampa at SEC Football Media Days, Mizzou coach Eli Drinkwitz gave us a long-awaited update on running back Ahmad Hardy, the best running back in the country, who was shot while at a concert in his home state of Mississippi back in May.
I know that I've been asked a lot
about Ahmad, and I did the very best that I could to save this update for the main stage. So what I want to tell y'all is this was a great opportunity for Ahmad to learn, and it was a great opportunity for our student athletes to learn. It was also a great reminder that there is no place for gun violence in this world, and that we need to do a better job of policing gun violence, not criticizing the police or the rights to bear arms, which is a Second Amendment right, but just saying that there is no place for gun violence, especially for our youth in society. Ahmad has been medically cleared from the bullet that struck him, and he is on the road to recovery. He did have the bullet did strike a bone in his body, and that has been fully healed and cleared. And today was his first day back towards a full recovery. We anticipate that he will make a recovery. What that recovery will look like after having a bullet, strike you is still to be determined. We do not know exactly what the return to play progression is because there's not a lot of literature and data on this, but we are utilizing our medical team along with our athletic performance team and nutrition to approach this at a very good pace. We do anticipate that this return to play protocol could take anywhere between 5 to 8 weeks, and at the end of the 8 weeks, we still don't know what his recovery will be from is he the same Ahmad Hardy that was last year. My anticipation and what I've seen, the way he's attacked his rehab, he's going to be a better Ahmad Hardy than when he was before. And I'm very proud of the way that he's approached his recovery. I'm not sure that his riding horses was part of the recovery protocol that his surgeon had in place. But hell, John Wayne rode after he'd been shot. He turned out all right. So Ahmad Hardy's trying the same approach.
All right, a very thorough explanation there from Coach Drink. The Mizzou opener against Arkansas Pine Bluff is in 6 weeks. He said 5 to 8 weeks is the protocol. So there's a chance that Ahmad Hardy, no guarantees, of course, but there's a chance that Ahmad Hardy could play in the opener, and there's a very good chance, you would think, in 8 weeks that he could play in the SEC opener and, again, have an opportunity to lead the league and maybe even the nation in rushing again. But great news for Mizzou. Number one, that he's alive, that he's able to experience this, that he's on the track to rehabbing, and that he's close enough that they can actually make a determination. They can say 5 to 8 weeks, and hopefully they have a little bit of definity in terms of how long it's going to take. Drink is also asked quite often about his thoughts on an expanded playoff. People know that he's smart and thinks about things like this, and he's for an expanded playoff, but wants it to be played out on the field.
130, I think it's 138 Division I playing schools. We have to have more opportunities and access to the playoffs. I am not for giving the committee more opportunities to put teams in the playoffs. As nice as I can be about it, committees are a bad idea in deciding on who should get in sports arenas. Sports are meant to be played and decided on the field. My idea last year, or suggestion last year, was about play-in opportunities, and I think each conference should have play-in games that create the opportunity to get into the playoffs. That's how I see it. I think it would create more excitement, avenues for your fans to be excited. I think if the top 8 teams in your conference had an opportunity to play in the playoffs, that gives you a measuring stick for each fan base that makes sense. I think this elimination of conference championship games, while I understand it as an opportunity to help you win the national championship, doesn't make sense because it puts too much emphasis on a singular outcome. And we can talk all we want about the process, but don't focus on the outcome. And then everything we're doing in college football is about the outcome, one single champion. And again, that doesn't make sense to me. So again, conference championships are important, need to be preserved. They're highly entertaining. They're highly valuable from a monetary standpoint. They're highly valuable from a fan engagement standpoint. So throwing those away so you can get a bad matchup between 24 and 18 doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Okay, here's the way I look at this, and I agree 100% with Eli Drinkwitz here. In college basketball and in college baseball and I believe in college volleyball, they have conference tournaments to determine who's going to go to the NCAA tournament. Essentially, it is a play-in tournament. Win and advance, win and advance. And that's what he's talking about for the top 8 teams in the SEC. Go from 8 to 4, 4 to 2, 2 to 1, and then obviously your top 2 teams in the SEC or any conference are going to wind up in an expanded 24-team playoff. Why not do it that way? And then the other part of this is, as he says, why not do it on the field? Why are we letting a committee determine who is playing for a national championship when it would be so easy to play the games on the field and let the team that wins actually advance and play for a championship? I think Eli sometimes is too smart for the NCAA. I think it'd be really good of them, for those people, not the committee people, but the people in charge, to get him in and get his ideas, because I think they'd say, yeah, that's a good idea. And more than anything else, Drink says college football needs to get a handle on paying players, on building a team, and how long players can play.
So I'm a math person, and anytime you have more than one variable in an equation, there's no solution to it. And right now we currently have 3 variables in any type of solution, and that's an unlimited cap, it's an unlimited transfer, and unlimited eligibility. And before anybody tells me that we have eligibility rules, I think they need to look within the league and see that we've had multiple years where multiple people have sued and won multiple years of eligibility. So anytime you have those 3 variables, you have no solution, and you're going to have a continued inflation of liquidity within the market, and that's unsustainable. I think our job is to protect and advocate for our student athletes to become the best version of themselves. And in doing that, there has to be guardrails in what they're given. And right now there are no guardrails. And instead of there being people who can help guide them along the way, we've allowed a lot of unintended consequences and bad actors into athletics and into the people, into players' lives. And I think that's an unfortunate thing. There's going to be long-term consequences for these student athletes as well as college universities. And we don't see those right now, but it doesn't mean they're not coming. And so I'm a proponent for getting some sort of solutions to those variables. But as long as there's a continued 3 variables that are unsolvable, there is no solution to the problem. And we can talk about media rights and lawsuits and all the different things at a macro level that we want, but at a micro level, those are the 3 biggest issues.
All right, the 3 biggest issues. Number 1, no salary cap. There's got to be a level of money that is shared among the schools that is doled out to the players. Right now, it's $20.5 million for all sports. Doesn't make sense. Football needs to set itself aside, and each team has X amount of dollars to spend. There needs to be a limitation on how much you can transfer. 1 unlimited transfer if your coach leaves, but the second time you try to transfer, you have to sit out for a year. And then eligibility, we've got it. The NCAA put it in place. You have 5 years to play 5 years, and that makes sense. If they can get a handle on the first 2 and avoid the lawsuits in the third one, then I think that they can achieve what Eli Drinkwitz wants them to achieve. He said it in much more erudite terms than me, but I think it can be done. I don't think that we are in a situation without a solution. Finally, everybody seems to agree that on some level, there needs to be government intervention if there's going to be a national template for sports to abide by. The NCAA is made up of all of the member schools. And SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey says getting everyone on the same page is the problem that frustrates the SEC.
We have regulated ourselves more aggressively than other colleagues by choice across our league. We've had different academic eligibility restrictions in the past. So we've had different transfer restrictions in the past. So some of what you hear comes out of a culture that we can regulate ourselves. But the frustration that exists is when you go to a meeting 8 years ago and we want to change the volunteer coach rule in a Division I setting, and the Division I membership can't see their way through change, and so that creates risk. I think some of the transition into this 5-year eligibility model, that it happened when it did and the way it did, that magnifies frustration. We went through a college football playoff discussion for years and introduced a 12-team playoff where it just sat because colleagues couldn't move. And they had reasons, but those reasons really didn't resonate. And so understand that beneath the observation is frustration. But I also know the pride with which I spoke of 13 national championships, and there is meaning and value. And I do think a national expectation that we participate in a national organization. But that national organization must function in a healthy manner. Otherwise, that simmering will continue.
No surprise that the logic of the NCAA is lacking and that somebody, Greg Sankey, the SEC, probably the Big Ten, probably the Big 12, probably the ACC, probably all frustrated with the lack of logic applied by the NCAA. So let's say that this would go from worse to worst and the SEC would depart the NCAA and set up their own system. Here's my idea, and it's a good one. A 16-team SEC that is apart from the rest of college football. You've got the North Division with Mizzou, Vandy, Tennessee, and Kentucky. The South is Alabama, Auburn, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State. These are, by the way, all geographically very simple to get to for fans. The West is Oklahoma, Texas, Texas A&M, and Arkansas. And the East, Georgia, LSU, South Carolina, and Florida. The North and West divisions, they had the old Big 8 and Big 12 teams. They can form the Bud Wilkinson Conference. The South and East can form the Bear Bryant Conference. Scheduling, play 3 games in your division every year. Plus, the other division in your conference every year, home and home, year by year. That's 4 games. That gets you up to 7 games played. Plus a division from the other conference. That's 4 more games. That gets you up to 11. And then the team from the other conference division that you didn't play that finished in the same spot the year before. So, for example, if Mizzou and Alabama are both finished second in their division, and Mizzou isn't playing the Southern Division that year, then they would play Alabama. It's that simple. And you play it that way every year. That gets you up to 12 games, and you finish the regular season on Thanksgiving weekend. 4 division winners make the playoffs, plus the 2 teams with the next best record in each conference, just like the NFL. So you have an 8-team playoff, and then after a bye week, division winners play at home, seed them, highest division winner versus lowest wild card in the conference. The second weekend in December, let's say December 12th, you go from 8 to 4 teams. Then December 19th, you go from 4 to 2 teams. And then you play the SEC championship game, and you don't need to worry about playing a national championship game because this is your national championship game. You play that on the Monday after the last NFL Sunday. Now, unless the Big Ten does the exact same thing, you're going to own that night. Nobody's going to care about the Big 12. Nobody's going to care about the ACC. So unless the Big Ten is doing it, maybe the Big Ten does it on Fox in an earlier game, and the SEC is on ESPN, ABC, you've got it set up. So you would have January 13th as your championship game. Each team would play every team at least every other year. Every team in the conference would see every other team every other year, and each team gets every team at home at least every 3rd year. So if you're an Alabama fan and you live in St. Louis, you can go over to Columbia, and every 3rd year you're going to be able to see the Crimson Tide. Playing 7 teams in your conference every year builds those rivalries too, and those rivalries are super accessible for every fan in the conference to drive to, and they will build a lot of consternation among fan bases and among coaches and players. Greg Sankey, you got it right here. We've got it figured out for you. I have no problem with the SEC doing this. I have no problem with not seeing Arkansas Pine Bluff. If I would love to see the KU game. I'd love to see the Illinois game, but that's not going to happen every year. And I can watch them on TV all the time. If the SEC does pull away from the NCAA, I think this is a great way to do it, and I don't think it would be necessarily a very bad thing, because every one of those teams in that group of 16 is a good team that can beat anybody, anytime, and that includes obviously what Vanderbilt has become, what Mizzou has become. It's possible. All right. There's my soapbox. Now I'll get down from it. Coming up in the list, we have Cardinal heroes that played for the Angels, too, as the Cardinals play the Angels this week. Stick around for the list. It is time for the list. And with the Cardinals playing the Angels, our list is Cardinal heroes that also played for Los Angeles or Anaheim or California, whatever the franchise was called when those guys played for them, Angels. All right, and we got to start with an honorable mention. It's our old buddy Jeff Weaver. You know, Weaver started with Detroit, then he went to the Yankees and the Dodgers before pitching a half season in Anaheim. And after that half season in Anaheim in 2006, the Cardinals needed starting pitching, and they went to the Angels and said, hey, would you trade us Jeff Weaver? And he got traded to the Cardinals for the second half of 2006. And he was very good for the Cardinals. Dave Duncan changed his fortunes dramatically, and after starting out slowly for the Redbirds, he turned it on in September, winning 3 key games down the stretch, but he really rolled in October. 5 postseason games for Weaver. He had a 2.43 earned run average in 5 starts, covering 29 2/3 innings. And Weaver started the deciding game of the World Series, Game 5, as you see right here. He struck out 9, including 9 in 8 strong innings. He went 8 innings in a World Series game. When's the last time you saw that? That might be it. And then he won the deciding game, and the Cardinals obviously won their 10th World Championship. And that's just an honorable mention. Jeff Weaver, pretty darn good honorable mention of Cardinal heroes. He was a hero, won Game 5 of the 2006 World Series. That was the final game, and he also played for the Angels. All right, now number 6, this is the official list. Jason Isringhausen, the Cardinals' all-time saves leader, was a postseason stud, finishing 18 postseason games in 3 Cardinal postseasons. He saved 8 of those. Izzy had a career 2.78 ERA in the playoffs for the Cardinals, and he had 9 postseason save opportunities and saved 8 in his Redbird career. After leaving here, he went to the Angels, but this was a huge moment for the Cardinals as they advanced and beat Arizona in 2002, wound up in the NLCS in his second year with the Redbirds, and that team wound up losing to the Giants in the NLCS. But Isringhausen saved the series against Arizona. Now, as we mentioned, after he left here, he went to Anaheim and ended his career pitching in 50 games for the 2012 Angels and finished with exactly 300 career saves. He was a great Cardinal, still a great St. Louisan, obviously from Brighton, Illinois, and has come back. But he's another great Cardinal hero that was an Angel. All right, number 5, George Hendrick. Game 7, 1982 World Series. Cardinals and Brewers, 4th inning, scoreless game. And Robin Yount, who was on, tried to go from first to third on a base hit by Cecil Cooper. And watch George Hendrick gun down Yount at third base. There's Ken Oberkfell with the tag, and Yount is out. And you'll see this from a different angle, and you'll see what a great play this was for George Hendrick. A really underrated offensive player, but defensively, he made it look easy. He was smooth, but watch the throw here, and I don't think that Yount had any idea that George Hendrick could throw like this, but he gets gunned down at third, and that was a huge play by George. It was 3-3 in the bottom of the 6th after Keith Hernandez had tied it with a 2-run RBI single. But George Hendrick up next again, tie game, 3-3. And with Hernandez on, with Mike Ramsey on, George with a base hit. And the Cardinals take the lead by a score of 4-3. And this RBI hit by George Hendrick would stand up as the winning run in a 6-3 Game 7 victory. So not only did Hendrick have that dramatic play, but he also had the game-winning RBI in Game 7 of the World Series. After the 1984 season, the Cardinals traded Hendrick to Pittsburgh for John Tudor. Then the Pirates flipped him at midseason to the Angels, where he spent the last 3.5 years of his career. Always had a great smile, always a great guy. Silent George Hendrick, is number 4 on our list, or number 5 on our list. Number 4 is David Eckstein. David Eckstein started out as an undrafted free agent with the Angels, and he helped them win a World Series in 2002. But as Edgar Renteria left the Cardinals for Boston following the 2004 season, the Angels non-tendered Eckstein, and Walt Jocketty pounced, giving Eckstein a 3-year contract with the Cardinals. And Eckstein paid off. A tough, gritty player that worked pitchers. You know, if it wasn't for his amazing at-bat, we wouldn't have seen Albert Pujols' dramatic homer in Game 5 of the 2005 NLCS against Houston. And of course, were it not for performances like this in the 2006 World Series, the Cardinals would have had way more of an uphill climb to beat the Tigers. Granted, they did it in 5 games, but Eckstein definitely a Cardinal hero, winning the 2006 World Series MVP. but also a key part of an Angels World Championship. So not only is he a Cardinal hero that played for the Angels, but he is a Cardinal hero that is also an Angels hero. That is the last time and the only time that the Angels have been in the World Series and won the World Series. And David Eckstein was their starting shortstop and played a huge role in that victory for then Anaheim and now Los Angeles. All right, let's move on to number 3. And you knew he was going to be here. Jim Edmonds, one of the greatest postseason performers the Cardinals have ever had, played the first 7 years of his career in Anaheim and made one of the great catches of all time. This is in Kansas City back in the 90s, 1994. And what a catch that was. You know, we can make an argument, and I think I can make a pretty safe argument, that that catch right there by Jim Edmonds was better than Willie Mays' catch in the 1954 World Series, because Mays didn't have to dive. Jimmy Ballgame did. Maybe the toughest catch ever made in the majors, and of course, Jimmy Ballgame made it, and he was amazing for them. But then he gets traded to the Cardinals in spring training of 2000, and he was a playoff star, helping beat the Astros in the 2004 playoffs, and then getting the Mets in the NLCS in 2006. He hit home runs, he made great plays, he got base hits, he drove runs in. He was an amazing performer in the postseason. Jimmy Ballgame, our number 3 Cardinal hero that also played for the Angels, and obviously, after helping the Cardinals win this NLCS, he would go on and have a great series against Detroit as well. You know, he probably couldn't have won MVP, because if it wasn't Eckstein, it would have been Scott Rowland. But Jim Edmonds was such an integral part of that team. Chris Duncan always told me that when he was playing the outfield, and Duncan always played first base, he was a novice outfielder, he said Jim Edmonds would tell him exactly where to be on every single play, and that Edmonds was never wrong. And of course, offensively, this big RBI hit, and that gives the Cardinals the 4-4 tie, and they go on to win this game and obviously win that World Series. So that's our number 3, Jim Edmonds. Okay, number 2 is David Freese. Do we ever get tired of this?
Into right, well hit. Back at the wall. It's off the wall. 1 run scores. Here comes Berkman. Freese has tied it. 7-7. Unbelievable. Freese hits it in the air to center. We will see you tomorrow night.
It's amazing that it's been 15 years ago that the Cardinals last won the World Series, and that David Freese became the hometown hero and had the iconic run into home plate by grabbing his helmet and spiking it between his legs before he got shredded by Nick Punto and the gang. And it's something that we will never forget. Obviously, a Cardinal hero, and arguably of the last of the century, the Cardinal hero. Now, after the 2013 season, the Cardinals would trade Freese to the Angels, where he would stay for 2 years wearing number 6 in honor of Stan the Man Musial. That was pretty cool. Another homage to St. Louis by David Freese, who also played for the Angels despite being a Cardinal hero. And you know who our number 1 is, the most heartbreaking departure of Cardinal heroes ever. When Albert Pujols signed as a free agent in Anaheim, he had an amazing stretch run in St. Louis. He had had a World Series victory under his belt, and he got hits, and he got home runs, and he just dominated the Rangers in Game 3 of the 2011 World Series. And this was one of his most iconic moments. Yes, we remember the 3-homer games in Chicago. We remember the 3-homer game on Easter against the Reds. But doing it against the best in the World Series is pretty incredible. He played great in the NLCS against Milwaukee and then turned it on in Game 3 here. Cardinals already had a big lead, but he kept Texas at bay with his 3-homer performance. The first one increases an 8-6 Cardinal lead in the 6th with a 3-run blast off Alexei Agando, and he wasn't finished. And I know you can say, well, this game was out of hand, but 3 home runs in a World Series is 3 home runs in a World Series. In the 7th inning, Albert steps in again, and the Rangers still haven't learned their lesson. One of the greatest players in the history of the sport, and they allow him to hit this 2-run shot off of Mike Gonzalez. And this one puts the Cardinals even further ahead. And there's the hitting coach, Mark McGwire, and the Cardinals know they're on their way in Game 3. And then in the top of the 9th inning, Cardinals have this one pretty well in hand. But former Cardinal Darren Oliver is on the mound for the Rangers. Cardinals taking him on, and Albert has seen him, knows the left-hander very well, and trying to become the 3rd player in Major League history to hit 3 home runs in a World Series game. Babe Ruth had done it, Reggie Jackson had done it, and then in the 9th inning against the Rangers at Globe Life Field, Albert Pujols against Darren Oliver steps in, and bing, bang, and Darren Oliver is going to pitch, and we're going to get a boom from Albert Pujols. 3 home runs in a World Series game, an absolutely heroic performance by a Cardinal. There it is. He did it so much, so many times, so incredibly for the Cardinals all those years. And that's how you etch yourself into the history books. But after that home run, 6 weeks later, he was an Angel, signing a 10-year deal for $240 million. And we're kind of lucky, actually, that he was a Cardinal hero that went to the Angels, because if Albert would have stayed here, this was really at the outset of social media, he would have been eviscerated by Cardinal fans the way he performed there and the fact that we didn't have the DH at that time in the National League. So he would have been a really compromised first baseman, and he did have his struggles there with injuries. And I don't think Cardinal fans would have liked him as much at the end as they did as when he came back in 2022. And of course, after a brief stop with the Dodgers 9 years later, he did return to hit his 700th career home run. Then he retired, and all was forgiven, and we're going to love him forever. That's the list. Cardinal heroes that played for the Angels as well here in the fight. And coming up as we roll on, we've got our daily wager. Stick around for that. Okay, good, thanks. Hey guys, I want you to take care of yourselves. I want you to make sure that your heart is good. You know, I have had cardiac events in the past, and St. Luke's is where I've always had my cardiac work done. I have a fantastic cardiologist named Morton Rinder at St. Luke's, and I'm actually going to visit him this Thursday. And whenever I have tightness in my chest and I'm concerned about it, I make sure that I get to St. Luke's. And you should too. They're affiliated with the Cleveland Clinic. They're as good as anybody in terms of working with the heart and working with other people to make sure that you are diagnosed properly. They're one of the top hospitals in America. They're in the top 5% of all cardiac hospitals in America, and they're right here in St. Louis for you. They have fantastic cardiologists to diagnose any heart issues. They have great surgeons with state-of-the-art equipment that can do great work with you and for your heart. And then their rehab nurses are as good as it gets, and you'll actually enjoy the rehab process after you have a cardiac event. There is no better place than St. Luke's for you to go if you feel like you have a heart issue. If you have a clicking sensation, a burning sensation in your heart, make sure you get to St. Luke's. You can give them a call, 314-205-6801 for more information, or you can find your doctor at St. Luke's at stlukes-stl.com. Time for our daily wager, and we do have a bet from our previous show on the Cardinals to win the series against the Angels. Things didn't go well. Looked pretty good in the 9th inning, didn't it, for Game 1, but then the Angels come back and beat the Cardinals. So now the Cardinals, for us to win that bet, need to win the next 2. But that's not going to prevent us from providing you with a daily wager. And you know who's hot? Nolan Arenado is hot. He's playing really well for the D-backs. By the way, he got his 2,000th career hit. I think he's a lock for a first ballot Hall of Famer. Well, the Diamondbacks are hosting the A's this week. And let's scroll down and find hits plus runs plus RBIs. And let's find our buddy Nolan Arenado. Hits plus runs plus RBIs. Three hits plus runs plus RBIs for Nolan Arenado. And he is a plus 177 to pull that off. So let's give the opportunity to Nolan Arenado to win us some money. And if we do put $100 on Nolan to provide us with that money, we will take home $277. All we have to do is make our daily wager on Nolan Arenado to have 3 hits plus runs plus RBIs against the Athletics. All right, that's your daily wager. Coming up, we've got today's fun fact, we've got story time with Uncle Randy, and we have today in sports history here in the fight. All right, time for today's fun fact. And Tom Brady, Hall of Fame quarterback, was on the Ribs and Soccer podcast and was asked who the best thrower of the football among quarterbacks was ever. Here's Brady.
I think there's no greater passer of the football than Aaron Rodgers. It would be like someone kicking the ball. I mean,
It was,
there's
man.
certain people like, Roberto Carlos, the Brazilian, like the way that he kicked that ball. Holy, I mean, there's certain people you're like, you see everyone do it, and then you see one person throw the ball that much better. I mean, Aaron Rodgers was incredible. He's hard to put into words how incredible he passes the ball.
Yeah.
The ball, the way it comes out of his hand, the way that it spins and delivers with the pace and with the accuracy, I think
Like a bullet coming out of
it's
his
like a
helmet,
bullet.
yeah.
There's only probably 3 people in the history of the NFL that could do it like him.
Maybe Marino, maybe Elway, and maybe Rodgers. You know, it's hard to disagree with Tom Brady. And by the way, Tom Brady became a pretty good thrower of the football himself. I don't think that he had the arm talent that those other guys had. But as our old friend Tony La Russa would say, for Aaron Rodgers, he's at least tied for first. All right, time for story time with Uncle Randy, and we're going to get the wheels spun for a decade and a year, or no, a decade in a sport, and we'll come up with a little story for you. This is 1990s action, and we're going to do a little 1990s baseball. So baseball from 1990 to 1999. And I was talking to somebody about this. Oh, it was Brian Jordan. So here's a story about August 12th of 1994 when the baseball players went on strike. You know, the teams and the owners of the teams would not fly the players back home to their home cities. So the Cardinals are stuck in Miami. So Tom Pagnozzi gets the team together, and he gets the guys that are making $1 million or more together, and he was one of them. And they worked it out. And the Cardinals were a pretty young team, you know, Langford, Gilkey, Jordan. Ozzie was making good money. I think Zeal might have been making okay money. But the way that it worked was everybody that made $1 million or more chipped in to get a charter flight, and everybody that made less than $1 million didn't have to pay for the flight back to St. Louis. So the players that were making a ton of money actually took care of their teammates, and that was a galvanized unit. That was good. Now, was it a good team? No, but what a class, great move on the part of the Cardinal catcher at the time, Tom Pagnozzi, to make sure that everybody got back home, and then everybody else was on their own. You know, the players at that time thought that the strike wouldn't last long. It started on August 12th, and they thought, oh, we might be out for a couple of weeks. Well, weeks turned into months. Bud Selig says we aren't going to have a World Series. Months turns into a lot more months, and the next season was actually truncated to 144 games. That started on August 12th of 1994, and a really class move by the Cardinal players to make sure that everybody on the team got home. And by the way, there was a charter flight waiting to go home, a big plane that brought the staff. It brought the manager, the coaches, the broadcasters, the equipment people, the trainers, all of those people. They came home on a virtually empty plane that night. That's how petty Anheuser-Busch was at that time when they owned the Cardinals under August Busch III. And fortunately for those Cardinals, they didn't have to spend any more time at South Beach than they needed to. That's story time with Uncle Randy. All right, now it's time for this date in sports history. And it was on this date in 2012, the Cardinals tied the biggest inning in team history when they scored 12 runs in the 7th inning, matching a feat from September 15th, 1926. These are the only runs of the game as they beat the Cubs 12-0 behind the pitching of Jake Westbrook. Pinch hitter Alan Craig had a pair of doubles during the frame, part of a major league record-tying 7 doubles during the inning. Skip Schumacher with a couple of RBIs to expand the Cardinal lead from 1-0 to 3-0. Skip always seemed to come through for this team, didn't he? And then after that, we saw David Freese earlier in the show, and David Freese steps in, and a 4-0 game turns into a 6-0 game because of David Freese. And then Matt Holliday with an RBI too, and the Cardinals wind up scoring 12 in the inning. That's the Freese RBI. And let's watch. And this is after another Alan Craig double, by the way. And Craig think about that. Craig was a pinch hitter that had 2 doubles in the same inning. And then here's Matt Holliday to give you 12 runs in an inning. Cardinals have never scored 12 in an inning since. They've done it twice in their history. But I think one of the coolest things about this is that not only did they score 12 in an inning, but it was the only 12 runs of the game. What a weird baseball game that was at Busch Stadium, and it was on this date in 2012, a year obviously that the Cardinals wound up going to the National League Championship Series and then having their hearts broken by the Giants, who went on to win that World Series against the team that the Cardinals had beat the year before, the Texas Rangers. So that was fun. That was a fun date in baseball history and in Cardinal history, to be specific. And I'll tell you what, you go back to that, and think about those names: Schumacher, Freese, Holliday, Craig, same group that basically had won for the Cardinals in 2011. And that 2012 team was eminently capable of going to a World Series and winning a World Series. They had the Giants on the ropes, but they had a severely compromised Chris Carpenter. As a matter of fact, it was the last start of Chris Carpenter's career in 2012 against the Giants in the playoffs, and he got rocked, and the Cardinals, they didn't allow, but the Giants wound up winning the game and then going on and winning the World Series. But aside from the fact that they were kind of beat up, Berkman was kind of beat up for Cal Carpenter, the talent on that team was as good as the talent on the 2011 squad, even though you were missing Pujols and even though you were missing 100% Chris Carpenter. That 2012 team was very capable of repeating if they could have just maintained a little bit of health. All right, that is this date in sports history. You know, people are loving Cardinal Fastball. If you haven't seen it yet, it's a 1-hour condensed version of the previous day's Cardinal game. And it's every day here on Matrix Midwest at noon and 4 p.m., unless the Cardinals have a game on Cardinals.tv in the afternoon, which they have this week on Wednesday in Anaheim, and then Thursday here against Arizona at Busch Stadium. But tell your friends that you see that show, and it's a great condensed version of all the action on Matrix Midwest. And then after the 4 o'clock showing, we have The Fight with Randy Carricker every day, 5 and 10 p.m., plus re-aired at 7 o'clock the next morning, all the great content like we brought you today. And you can also just download the Matrix Midwest app. And I think this is a great way to do it. If you want to hear what I have to say about sports, Bluetooth it in your car. It's super easy. So there's a lot of great things happening here at Matrix Midwest for you. And you can fight in The Fight if you've always wanted to do that. Email me at thefight@matrixmidwest.com, and we'll get you on. We'll Zoom on Wednesday at noon, and we'll play The Fight. All right, that's it for the show. For our outstanding director, Tyler Klaus, I'm Randy Carricker. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it, and we will see you next time in The Fight. So long, everyone.